KFI AM 640.
We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Let me tell you about For Profit, as in Prophet. It's a faith-based comedy, which tells the story of Damon Fisher, a struggling entrepreneur who encounters Archangel Raphael, revealing that he, as in Damon, has been chosen by God to become a part-time prophet with the divine mission to save his crumbling, corrupt hometown. But to make matters worse, Fisher must also battle an endlessly trash-talking demon in the form of an ever-present cameraman that only he can see. For Profit is available now everywhere for video download and was written, directed, and co-produced by my next guest, Mr. Mark Stewart Iverson, who joins me now on the show. Mark, it's good to talk to you this evening, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, Mo. Appreciate you big time.
Mark, I talk about the Christian community as someone who is a Christian on my show oftentimes, and it's hard to sometimes dabble in the sacred and secular world simultaneously. But it has shown me that we live in a time in which people are generally super sensitive. I need not tell you. Were you ever concerned about how a comedy would be received by the Christian community?
Well, sure. I am human. I have those kinds of thoughts. But at the same time, I felt called. I felt called to use the gifts that God gave me to tell this story. You know, I worked in the comedy world for a better part of a decade. And so God gave me the skills of trying to be able to make people laugh and bring joy into people's hearts. And he asked me to bring that to the faith world, you know. And so when I wanted to tell this story, when this story came into my heart, I felt like we needed to make sure and be able to laugh, even though we want to go deep spiritually, even though we want to have those theological discussions, even though we want to go into the drama and the inspiration. And the movie has all that. But at the same time, let's laugh. Let's be able to joke. Let's have some wit. Let's have some humor. You know, God put joy in our hearts for a reason. And I really think that film especially is a great medium to be able to laugh. And when you have something that I try to do here, which is the balance of make you cry and make you laugh, I think that's the real sweet spot when it comes to the entertainment I'm looking for, at least.
Okay, there's this old saying, I know you've heard it, preaching to the choir, meaning that the sermons, the message, biblical word is often reaching only those who are believers, already saved, already in church. How do you reach the masses, men of every birth, as the hymn used to say, and not just preach to the choir?
You make a great movie. You know, that's what I put my efforts into here. God made me a filmmaker before I really came back to him, you know, and so I've been making movies for 20 years, and my faith is now very strong, but it wavered for a long time. And so I just kept working on my craft of filmmaking, and the spiritual side of me slowly grew. But in order to reach people with spirit, in order to reach and put out God's word to the masses, you have to have a great package. You have to have something, a story, a narrative, a piece of material that reaches people more than just the message. There's a lot of great Christian films out there with great messages, fantastic themes, and really good heart. But they don't always have the best acting, the best production value, the best cinematography. We know this. And the faith world has unfortunately become a problem. But that's where I really wanted to step in. And God, I felt called to be like, look, let's make a great movie first and foremost. In order to get away and start to talk to the congregation and not just the choir, you really have to engage them. You know, and the story that is set forth in For Profit is a very universal story. It's angel and demon, angel on one shoulder, demon on the other. Everybody, every human being battles that. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. Every human being battles against the demon voices and must try and listen to those angel voices. And just telling that story, first and foremost, with great characters, great cinematography, great acting. I'm so proud of my cast. That was the goal. And I think that should be the goal when you're trying to reach a bigger audience and really trying to touch people's hearts beyond just pushing the same message over and over. The message needs to be there, of course, but you gotta have a great piece of filmmaking in there too. And if you don't, then you're not going to reach anybody except the echo chamber you're in.
All right, let's get into this story. Who is Damon Fisher when we meet him in For Profit, Prophet, and what is happening in his life?
Well, he is struggling. He is struggling. His business is falling apart. His town is falling apart. They're shutting down the homeless shelter that his stepmom works at. His marriage is having issues. He's having financial problems, spiritual problems, and he's got a demon that's latched onto him. He sees this cameraman always watching him, always filming him, always recording him, always talking in his ear, talking negative, saying sometimes funny things, but just being annoying and bringing him down. And he is not doing great. That said, he puts on a good face. He moves forward. He tries to have good days and things like that. But he is not where he needs to be spiritually. And so what happens is God sends an angel, brings it into his life. Not unlike a modern day It's a Wonderful Life. Very much like that in the setup of this story, where an angel is sent by God to help this man become what he's supposed to be, which is this part-time prophet in the town, and help save the town from crumbling. And I think it's very relatable, not only because he's struggling, like I said, with the angels and the demon voices, but he's also really cares about his hometown and his family. And he's really, really trying to be a better man. Not unlike George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, where he's doing all these great things, putting one foot in front of the other, trying to do the best he can for the town, for his marriage, for his family. And yet things keep falling apart and things keep going wrong. And that's where he needs to find his faith and put it in those angel voices and in the Archangel Raphael specifically.
Here's the trailer for Profit.
Damon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kenny.
Let's get down to business. Tell the folks.
Hey, idiot. We're family, you and I, all right?
People shove these in your mailbox. Do you read them? You're really awkward. You know that?
You support defunding the crisis shelter.
Some services just have to go.
They lost state funding years ago, federal decades ago.
You're a sinner, Private Damon.
Thanks, Lieutenant George.
The Archangel Raphael.
Descends for you, Private Damon. You sinner!
Good morning, Joaquin.
Oh, is this warm?
I have been sent by the Most High in the name of the Son of Man. You are blessed, Prophet.
I don't believe in God anymore.
You have been, recruited, scouted, drafted for the army of the Most High. You have been chosen to save Mount Zion from destruction. Can I get an amen?
Corruption, embezzlement, collusion, local fascism all the way to the top.
Mayor Owens?
The night is always darkest before the
Dawn.
dawn.
You need to tell your wife about us.
I know you're struggling with your faith,
No,
but
babe, I'm not struggling. It's gone.
Come on, you were never going to be as good a doctor as your dad anyway.
What about what I just said on the radio? I mean, is any of that true? About the
look at the energy.
Everyone has heard this disgusting accusation.
Can't accuse someone of something without evidence.
I'm taking action. I'm choosing. I'm done.
He thinks he talks to angels.
And everybody thinks I'm bonkers.
Diagnosed mentally ill.
It is your path, your journey, your prophecy.
Do you want to know my prophecy? It's shutting my mouth.
Oh, Damon. I want to hug you. And I want to punch you in the face.
Say it again.
You're lying! Tell her!
What do you want from me? I don't want to be a prophet.
Must have faith. Good morning, Joaquin.
My guest right now is Mark Stewart Iverson as we talk about his new film, For Profit, Prophet, which is available now everywhere for video download. And we'll have more with Mark Stewart Iverson in just a moment.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I'm speaking with filmmaker Mark Stewart Iverson, who is telling us about his new movie, For Profit. That's Prophet. It is a faith-based comedy, which tells the story of Damon Fisher, who's a struggling entrepreneur who has to battle both the angels and demons in his life. And let me pick up right there, Mark, as you were telling us about this demon who is ever present, has this camera in his face, whispering in his ear. I took that to mean, or in a way, could be relatable to social media today. We have this obsession with how we are perceived, how we are seen. We're trying to be of the world. Am I warm?
Oh, you're hot. Yes, you're on it. I think when it comes to nowadays, absolutely, it's the social part. You have to have a social identity. You have to really think about how other people are perceiving you. In fact, that's not what you should be most worried about. You should be most worried about the Most High and his perceptions of you and what you're doing in terms of what the angels are seeing and following the Spirit. But when you have this, for Damon, the demon manifests as this cameraman, like you said. And I think it's not only relatable in the sense of nowadays with social media, but one of the things that I talk a lot about in theology when it comes to the enemy is the idea of bringing up your past mistakes, recording all of your bad problems, all the things you said wrong, all the issues you have, and just recording them and relaying them back to you all the time. Look, you're not great. You remember you said that wrong and you did this wrong and you made this mistake. Remember. And that can get overwhelming. It can really become a problem in people's lives. And that's, I think, the theme that I put in there from a personal sense that I put into the film is that kind of theology where you have the demons always trying to tell you that you're not growing and you're not changing and you're not being better. Remember, you used to be bad. You are a bad person. Remember. But no, you got to look to the future. You have to look to the now. You have to look to those angel voices and follow them. And when it comes to social media, oh man, yeah, it's a perception. The perception of you has become what needs to be your identity, and that's just the opposite. It's the opposite, and your heart needs to lead the way, not your image. And that is a big issue these days. And I'm glad you caught up on that, and I feel like a lot of the audience will, and I hope they do see that in the film as well.
I suspect that there is some of you in the film. Just because you're the writer of For Profit, it doesn't mean that you too couldn't have been impacted by the journey or the content that you've created. Who are you now on the other side of creating For Profit? And was that impacted in any way by creating For Profit?
Oh, in every way. I was a boy and now I am a man. In every step of the sense, in the filmmaking sense, I learned so much about business. I invested a lot of my own money into this film. I am fully invested as writer, director, producer, and co-financier. So in the business sense, I got a master's. I got an MBA in business making this film. But in a spiritual sense, absolutely. One of the things that I've struggled with my whole life as an artist is not so much faith in the creation of art, but faith in that it will find an audience. And I think every artist struggles with that. Every artist says, well, I know what to make. I have this idea, but will it get me a life? Will it get me finances? Will it get me where I need to be? Will it get me spiritually, enlightened? Whatever the goal is as an artist, you always struggle with, will people like my work? And I struggled with that big time with this film because going back to what we talked about before, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a real filmmaker. And I'm also a man of faith. And I put those two things together. And that sometimes feels like a very difficult task.
Yes.
You really want to spread the word. You want to tell people about spirit. You want to do what God's asking you to do. But at the same time, you also want to make sure and make a great piece of art. You want to make sure and tell a great story. You want to use the skills that God gave you. So that blending together is what I learned as an artist, and being able to not only put my spiritual self and my artistic self and my business self all together, but also it be me and allow my voice to shine through. And I found my voice in this film and the voice that God gave me. And I am so excited to move forward and continue to make films and tell stories, because now I feel like I'm a full-fledged artist.
You understand what I'm getting ready to ask you because you've been on this journey. We, as people of faith, we're at different points in that journey. Some people are relatively new And some people have been on that journey for a while and they know about the twists and turns. In other words, we're all going to see For Profit, which is available everywhere now for video download. We're going to see it at different points in our journey. What would you want in a general sense for people to take away from For Profit? Because we may get different things because we may only understand certain things on a certain level and we may not be ready for the fullness of the message contained therein.
Well, first of all, I would say, please, make sure and interpret the film how you're going to interpret it and take in what it gives you. So many things, so many different people have said so many different things about what their favorite thing about the movie is, how it impacted them, what scenes made them cry or laugh. And that's so wonderful to hear. The one thing I would say that I keep coming back to that was the main point when I first started writing the script, and it's still today, is the most important idea of this film is you gotta follow the angel. You gotta follow the angel voices. Everybody's got the demon voice and everybody's got the angel voice, and you have to follow that angel voice. Maybe it even might take you a minute to figure out which voice is which, and that's a struggle there.
Spiritual discernment, absolutely.
Exactly. So definitely work on that maybe first, but once you know what the angel voice is and what the demon voice is, you have to follow the angel voice. And it's so difficult. I struggle with it every single day. My main character struggles with it throughout the entire movie because you don't really always want to do what the angels are telling you to do. You don't want to follow God's will a lot of times because it's difficult. It's going to, going back to the social media thing, it's not going to be perceived the way you want it to be perceived if you do what you have to do and you're being asked to do. It's going to be a struggle no matter what to do the right thing, to follow those angel voices, but you have to on so many levels, not only spiritually, not only because this world has fallen, but I think also really because at the end of the day, you do want to follow the angels and you do want to go with spirit. It's just that you have a little ego and you have a little demon on your shoulder that says, no, just take it easy. Just do the easy thing. You don't have to go do that hard thing that you have to have faith to do or whatever. Blah, blah. Just take it easy. Just sit back, relax. Everything is fine. You don't have to do that. But no, you do, especially when you're called. And I felt called to make this movie. And I think everybody listening right now feels called to do something, to follow a path that is difficult, whether it's with your family, your friends, your business, your artistry, your children, whatever it is that the angels are telling you to do, just flow with that spirit and listen to them always.
For Profit, that's PROPHET, is available right now everywhere for video download and was written, directed, and co-produced by my guest who you've just heard, Mark Stewart Iverson. Mark, thank you so much for this conversation. I know it touched someone. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you for what you do. Bless you. This was amazing. I'm humbled and really proud to be here.
It's Later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Give me the playback and watch me bang it.
Throw out your hands, stick out your tush, hands on your hips, give them a push. You'll be surprised you're doing the French mistake. Voila!
Have you got it?
Yes.
Sounds like steam escaping. Action! Okay. Oh, wait till I get out. Wait till I get out. Okay. Playback!
Throw out your hands, stick out your tush, hands on your hips, give them a push.
KFI AM 640, It's Later with Mo Kelly, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. Maybe you're not old enough to remember where that's from. Maybe you just haven't been exposed to enough fantastic classic American cinema to know where that is from. But it's been 50 years and a few months since the movie Blazing Saddles was released. And this past weekend, there was a 50th anniversary screening of Blazing Saddles at the Peacock Theater here in LA. And there was even a Q&A with Mel Brooks himself. And I wish I could have been there for that. That would have been wonderful. But here's something that he said to the audience, which really jumped out at me. He was saying, quote, "I was on the way out of the theater and somebody grabbed the nape of my neck and took me to the manager's office, threw me down And he was the head of all of Warner Brothers, the same Warner Brothers, which is about 20 feet from this studio right now. Ted Ashley. I was with John Calley, who was in charge of the studio, but not in charge of all of Warner Brothers. This guy was the head guy. He threw me a legal pad and a Sharpie and said, right, no hitting an old lady, out. No hitting a horse, out. No farting, out. Why listen to anything? I would have had an 11-minute movie. That's Mel Brooks. So he left. Mel Brooks, crumpled up his notes, threw it in the wastebasket. Could you imagine if they cut out all the things that the studio was asking him to cut out? And if you've seen Blazing Saddles, it specifically disses Hollywood and the movie studio. It was meta before the idea of meta was even a thing in Hollywood. I think I've seen Blazing Saddles maybe 45, 50 times. Maybe. And if you don't remember, originally it was supposed to be with Richard Pryor. They couldn't get Richard Pryor, so they got Cleavon Little. And Gene Wilder was not even the first choice for Waco.
Wasn't it Gig Young? And
yes,
he was too drunk to do it?
He was drunk. He was an alcoholic. Yep.
Yeah. And if you look, by the way, there's a TV movie called Spectre from a couple of years later. He's drunk through the whole movie in that. Seriously.
Did you know who was the guy in Jaws who played, what was his name? Robert, who owned the boat?
Oh, Robert Shaw.
Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
He was drunk through all of Jaws.
He was one of the all-time great Hollywood drunks.
And it worked for every role that he was in for whatever reasons.
Like I've seen him recently on an old Cavett show just show up drunk for the show.
But anyhow, getting back to Blazing Saddles, I think people have misunderstood its importance and relevance and the whole point of it in recent years, because we hear people who are bemoaning comedy today, how you can't say this, you can't say that. They could never make Blazing Saddles today. But do you know the whole point of Blazing Saddles? Do you know that it was making fun of racists and racism? It was making fun of Hollywood. It was making fun of all the people who are mostly uptight today, who are mad about Hollywood today.
Does it make you think of Deadpool in some respect?
Oh, no. I said this on the Nerdorama podcast. I think that Ryan Reynolds, especially through Deadpool, is the closest thing we have to the Mel Brooks golden age of movies, because there was nothing which was off limits.
Nothing. Sacred cows. Those are all tipped.
Right. And now there's certain lines that Ryan Reynolds clearly won't cross when it comes to race, but there are a lot of other lines that he will cross gladly.
Well, no, Deadpool isn't a race movie. Blazing Saddles was specifically a race satire.
True. And no, you can't recreate Blazing Saddles because you can't recreate the America it was born out of. You can't recreate the times and the circumstances surrounding Blazing Saddles. It was, when they say it was a different time, yes, it was a much different time. And I'm old enough to remember that time. People want to remember the movie, but you also have to remember the context of when it was written, what was going on in America in the early 1970s. You're coming out of the civil rights movement, and there's just this period of settling where you're trying to find some equilibrium, and we were getting better, but we were still dealing with the demons of the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
There's no question about that, but you've got to put this in the context of, like, there's a big difference between Mel Brooks and Cleavon Little doing race humor and using those dicey words than, say, if you were watching a Mel Gibson production of Blazing Saddles. When it's satire and it's punching up, not down, that makes a huge, huge difference. It makes all the difference. Like, for instance, here's another example. When I came into work today, I told you that I just saw a fantastic old movie from the late 60s called Castle Keep with Burt Lancaster, right? It's a World War II movie, and one of the characters is a black private. He's the writer, he's the narrator of the story, and they get to this castle that they're trying to defend, and the black character says, gee, I wonder if I'm going to bring down the property values here. So coming out of his mouth, that's a hilarious satirical joke. But if it came out of the mouth of the redneck character in the movie, it would have taken on a whole different meaning.
Well, also, we're at a place in America and time in America where the mere mention of race means that you are racist. If you acknowledge that there is an issue of race, you're called a racist. I'll give you a perfect example. Last night, I mentioned the name Sonia Massey in regard to her shooting in her own house as a passing thought, talking about Paris and the Olympic opening ceremonies, how Christians are loath to acknowledge Sonia Massey, who was saying literally, in Jesus' name, I rebuke you. You know, using the name of Jesus, Christians have nothing to say about her, and they had plenty to say about the Olympics. I mentioned Sonia Massey in passing, and I get messages from people saying, why did you turn that into a race debate? Not understanding that acknowledging that race exists in America is not racist. What's racist is when you try to malign people and denigrate and subjugate through race. And we're in our reticence and our reluctance to make these distinctions and understand the difference is why I think we're so uptight today as opposed to 1974 when Blazing Saddles came out.
Yeah, times have changed, but in some ways they're the same or worse. It seems like recently a lot of people have crawled out from under rocks and said things that we never thought we'd hear again in our lifetimes.
Yeah, when I was growing up, I was told by my parents, like, hey, you know, it'll be better for you. You know, the older racists will just eventually die off. Mm-hmm. Well, it didn't exactly happen that way. And there's a degree of animosity today which is greater than when I was a child. And as a child, I was called the N-word first day of school, kindergarten, and every year since. Every single year. There has not been a year in which I've been on this earth where someone hasn't called me the N-word, either through my work, either through my public life or personal life. Every single year. So I think I kind of know, you know, the temperature in America from year to year. It's not something that I think will ever get past. But there are, going back to Blazing Saddles, there are moments where someone can best contextualize how ridiculous we can be.
God bless America.
And that's why I love Mel Brooks and all of his work and what he's done for comedy. And I don't know if anyone will be able to duplicate what he does, because I think his work existed in a time which is very specific. You can't rewrite Blazing Saddles for today's audiences. It just wouldn't work. It wouldn't make sense. There's no cultural tent poles or markers for people to understand it. But if you have not seen Blazing Saddles, go watch it with someone who's at least 50 years old, 55 years old, and can walk you through some of the jokes and explain the context. A lot of them they're not going to understand, but you got to see it.
You've seen this movie so many times. I wonder if one of your favorite lines is, there's a part where Gene Wilder and Cleavon Little are
hiding behind the rock.
Hiding behind the rock.
How did I know?
And he says, you've got to remember that these are just simple farmers. These are people of the land, the common clay of the New West.
But who are they looking at?
You know, morons. One of the best lines in the whole movie.
The movie was so funny because I think everyone knew someone in that movie. When I say knew someone, it's like, oh yeah, I know someone who's just like that. They're talking about so-and-so. Or they could look at the Hollywood machine and how ridiculous Hollywood was, because Blazing Saddles made fun of America. It made fun of Hollywood. It's a movie inside of a movie. If you see how it ends, it literally turns into another movie.
Masterpiece. Total masterpiece.
So if you haven't seen Blazing Saddles, or you need to see it again, just see it tonight. If you want to remember what America was 50 years ago, Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Before we get out of here, I did want to finish talking about Mel Brooks, because Blazing Saddles is not even my favorite Mel Brooks movies. It's History of the World Part 1, all of that. And Stephen, why don't you go ahead and pull up The Inquisition before we go, because that's my favorite song from History of the World Part 1. And I waited 40 years for History of the World Part 2, and I'm sorry to say, Part 2 did not measure up to Part 1. My goodness. And certain things you just can't recreate. We talked about it, waiting for it, and we were kind of scared. It's like, can you do it again? It's been too long. Most of the original people who were in Part 1 had already passed on, with the exception of Mel. So it wasn't going to have that same feeling, and it didn't. I mean, you know, it was a fair attempt at it, but it just didn't recreate that magic. Some things you just can't duplicate. Like, I would never want a sequel to Blazing Saddles. Never.
But you know they're doing a sequel to Spaceballs.
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's happening.
Is it going to be with Rick Moranis as well?
No, I think this one stars, what is the kid's name? It is an entirely new one. We'll look it up. I mean, well, Foosh just get the Inquisition for us.
The Inquisition.
Let's begin.
The Inquisition.
Look out, Sid.
We have a mission to convert the Jews. We're gonna teach them
wrong from right.
We're gonna help them
see the light
and make an offer that they can't refuse.
That the Jews just can't refuse.
Confess. Don't be boring. Say yes.
Say yes.
Don't be dull.
A fact you're ignoring.
It's better to lose your skull cap than your skull.
Or your gavalt.
The Inquisition.
What a show.
The Inquisition.
Here we go.
We know you're wishing that we'd go away. But the Inquisition's here and it's here to stay.
Oh boy. The Inquisition. What joy. The Inquisition. Oi, oi.
And something people miss and they don't understand, in the 1970s, musicals were a really, really big thing. Blazing Saddles was a musical. History of the World Part 1 was a musical. So it fit within the times. You know, when you do musicals today, they don't have the same type of emotional impact. They don't do as well.
Nah, they do. Well, there are a handful, but those are musicals based on musicals. Those are just films that are on existing musicals. They're not new material like what Mel Brooks was creating.
Right. And it was a movie, and then all of a sudden they would break out in song.
And it made sense.
Yeah. And look, you heard the lyrics. You just can't do that today on TV. And I don't know what the appetite would be for it in the theaters. And I've long said you can't go back. You can't recreate the past. You can't get that same magic back. But, you know, I can proudly say that I lived through the glory years of Mel Brooks.
Well, okay. But yes, Mel Brooks, he is producing the sequel to Spaceballs starring Josh Gad.
Yeah, and he also produced and appeared in History of the World Part 2.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he lost his touch. I'm just saying there's certain magic that you cannot recreate. And I think that's a function of we're different as Americans. How we consume content is really different. And, you know, like, for example, I don't know, and I thought about this before to make a parallel here. I don't know if Richard Pryor could do the same comedy today that he did in the 1970s, whether it would have that same impact. George Carlin, yes. Richard Pryor, I don't know whether because we don't even look at stand-up comedy the same way. We don't have the same affinity for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Richard Pryor as a movie actor, sure. But as a stand-up comedian, I don't know if he would be as successful. I mean, look at Eddie Murphy, who started in stand-up. He's not trying to really go back to that.
Yeah, he's got a couple stand-up tours out there, but that's not his focus.
Right.
He's moved on because also I believe he knows that level of comedy that was in Raw and Delirious, those jokes don't hit the same because right now we're just that profane a country. So him dropping all those F-bombs on stage is going to sound like whatever.
Yeah.
Stuff like that doesn't work.
And Richard Pryor in the age of Dave Chappelle, most comedians don't feel the need to tour anymore and doing stand-up comedy tours. They'll do the HBO special and Netflix special, and that will be that. You know, I don't think they put in the same type of time honing their craft in the way that Dave Chappelle did, because he's probably the last of that generation who actually honed their craft and still kept up doing stand-up throughout his whole career. He did a few movies, but that wasn't what he was really into.
Yeah. And like the difference I'd say with Mel Brooks movies and being able to do something like that now, Star Wars as a franchise right now is laughable to many. So doing a film that's poking fun at Star Wars is like, whatever. People are laughing at the series as a whole. When Spaceballs came out, everyone looked at Star Wars as like, don't you dare make fun of Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know, people took that type of stuff more serious. Even a film like History of the World was funny because we didn't have the level of satire and stuff that we have on television now. So it's a lot harder. Like Ryan Reynolds, as you mentioned, what they were able to do with Deadpool is bold because they're saying things that no one would dare say about a studio to their face right now. That's what they're doing, which is what made Deadpool Wolverine so shocking.
And that's what Mel Brooks was talking about. Hey, Warner Brothers said, take this out. And then he just made a whole movie, keeping it all in, making fun of, say it with me, Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And those are the common threads. But no, I wouldn't say Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy, they're not Mel Brooks. I would say they're Mel Brooks-esque. And Spaceballs too. Yeah. It doesn't make sense because there's no Star Wars to make fun of in that way. Yeah. So Spaceballs is like, all right, and it's not going to make sense to anyone. But
just tell me they're not going to make a sequel to Young Frankenstein. That I can't handle.
I do believe that they are. Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, stop!
No, I'm serious.
You mean like Igor and Frankenstein?
Yeah.
They probably will. Since Marty Feldman and Gene Wilder are gone, I can see that in a heartbeat. They would do that.
Nothing's sacred.
There's nothing new anymore. KFI AM 640 live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
Stimulating talk for independent thought.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio